Hi, everybody. Is the mic on? Excellent. Welcome to Content in the Geek. The first session this afternoon is about data. I'd like to be very clear about something. These sessions this afternoon are not really about technology. They are about technology, but they're about using technology as a tool for creating better content, connecting with audiences better, making more money, overall getting the stories to the people who want to hear them. The first session, we're going to talk about big data and the television industry. Some of you will be familiar with ways that you can use data to predict sales, to shape your distribution, to plan. Some of you may not be aware that you can also use data for more creative purposes. With me today to discuss these things are Seger from Parrot Analytics, Rob Gabel from Tubular Labs, and Tom Bowers from Spredfast Media. And I'm going to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves. Tom?
Thank you, Louisa. So my name is Tom Bowers. I'm the head of creative at Spredfast for Europe. Spredfast deals with media agencies, broadcasters and brands, and we deal with smart social. Now, what is smart social? Essentially, we look at all of the social analytics for all different production companies and broadcasters, harnessing that data, then visualizing that data in various different ways, and then looking at how those campaigns have performed in very detailed ways to finesse and propulse the social TV industry in general. And just to give you an idea, this is a quick sizzle reel of some of the stuff for media activations that we've done in Europe.
Check the hashtags at the bottom of the screen, vote for which song you want, and by the end of the show, the song with the most votes, I'll play. So stay tuned.
A little mixer or a little monster, or you're a member of the Beehive or the Navy, head to 4music.com/.
Sharing goal faces with the nation. Share yours at ITV Football with hashtag goalface. Brace yourself.
Well, it seems people have got a bit patriotic. Sarah, you've won with 73%.
Thanks very much, Tom. Next up, Rob Gabel.
Hello, thank you, Louisa. My name is Rob Gabel, and I'm founder and CEO of Tubular Labs. Is this, yeah? No. I have a couple slides. We'll give it 1 second. Here we go. We provide digital video intelligence. You can think of something like a Radian 6 for social media or a Nielsen or a ComScore for TV. We provide very detailed video insights. So our software is used, we empower the digital teams at people who create content. And these days, it's a lot of people. It's, of course, media companies, MCNs, also brands with content studios. And they use our intelligence, which I would describe as analytics is information about you, your content, how it performs. And YouTube, for example, provides great analytics about your content. But intelligence is how is everything else doing, all of the creators, all of the other content. And you can use that to make better content promotion and partnership decisions. We work with almost every MCN, major media companies you can see here, and some of the content studios on the right. And we're both a software company. We also have an internal consulting group that can help turn some of the data into insights. In this example, Beachbody was looking at what kind of content was underrepresented on YouTube and used it to decide burpees would be one of the good exercises. And when you're pumping out 2 videos a day or 2 videos a week, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of videos and you need lots of ideas.
Thanks very much, Rob. And finally, we have Wered from Parrot Analytics.
Thanks, Louisa. So I'm Seger. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Parrot Analytics. Parrot Analytics is a company that brought together a group of industry leaders, creatives, and scientists in order to achieve 2 things. One, solve some of today's leading industry problems, and 2, help shape the industry's future. So looking at today's industry problems, the guys here are talking about lots of different ways that people are consuming and interacting with content. They're talking about it on Facebook and Twitter. They're viewing it on YouTube and Dailymotion. They're discussing it on Reddit and Tumblr. They're downloading on BitTorrent and sharing it on file sharing networks. And we refer to all of that as global content demand. And the industry problem is the need to measure that global content demand across all of different platforms in real time, across every single platform. So people talk about Netflix shows and Amazon shows on different platforms, and in every single country in the world, because that is possible. And so that's exactly what we've done, and by introducing Parrot Demand Rating, which is the industry's first cross-platform global demand measure. So the ability to measure exactly how well any given content item is doing in any given market in real time. So, for example, how much demand is there for Orange is the New Black right now in the US? And how does it compare to House of Cards? And how are they doing compared to Amazon's Transparent? So these are all digital originals that traditionally we haven't been able to get any objective insights into. Now we can. So that's one of the ways that we're solving some of today's industry problems. In terms of shaping the future, we like to think of as leveraging science to improve art. So using all of that data and that data science to help complement and empower decision-making in the industry, specifically about accurately predicting the future and many other applications that I know we'll touch on here. So that's Parrot.
Thanks very much, guys. So let's talk. Starter for 10. As I said earlier, a lot of content creators and rights holders know how to use data in some relatively straightforward fashions to cut better deals, to anticipate revenue, to plan distribution, etc. What are some of the things that you wish people would do with data and with analytics? Want to kick us off, Wade?
Sure, yeah. So many ways. I mean, I don't know where to start. If I had to pick one way where I really wish that more data is used, and so we all know the example of Moneyball, right? So using data to help improve our batting average and make other select decisions. Of the network TV shows that air in the US every year, 7 out of 10 don't make it past their first season. So as an industry, we pump out 40 pilots, and 2 of them hit the screen. And out of those, 70% don't make it past the first season. So an absolutely enormous failure rate. Billions of dollars are wasted into that. So I think that's one part where I think if we apply the Moneyball example and leverage data and that as part of the decision-making process from the start all the way to the to the end, I think that will hopefully improve some of these numbers that are quite dreadful right now.
Just to add to that, I think it's about integrating that data set into the creative output and understanding exactly what your audience is saying and how that can shape where your creative is going. I think too often, particularly with social data, which is what we specialise in, that data is just looked at as, oh, it's an individual tweet or it's just one Joe Blogg's opinion. But if you take an overview of all of that data, it really can give you a good representation of where potentially creatively you could change the editorial. And move your program into a new dimension of something that's going to resonate further with audiences. So for us, that's really, really important to perpetuate the social TV industry just in general of where it can go. It's not just about taking risks, it's taking risks that are educated with data behind them. And that's what we always base our decisions on creatively when we kind of talk to broadcast production companies.
I'd like to see the data used to partner more when it comes to creating digital content. So, we were in each country 3 networks, and they added 300 cable channels. Now there's 3 million of these creators, so there's a shoulder and a tail to content creators that didn't exist before. And the media and brand companies actually tend to be in the tail these days, not in digital media, if you're thinking YouTube and Facebook and that kind of thing. And there are all these creators that you probably haven't heard of, 20,000 of them with 1 million views a month or more, who they have an audience, they have a brand voice. They're mini Oprahs, they're mini Anderson Coopers, and some of them like your brand. They drive minis, and they're people, right? So they drive minis, and they cook with Hamburger Helper. They decorate their furniture, their apartment with IKEA, right? And they have very strong opinions on how to make things. And so I'd like to see that done more. It's not traditional casting, if you will, because you're not hiring them just to say a line that's been pre-written, but using these people to co-create content for brands they can really authentically get behind. And I think that's, at least one corner of the world that's an exciting way to use data.
Nice. I want to keep going on the creative angle. There's a lot of fear in the industry, I think, that by using data, we're actually shutting down creativity. We're squeezing out the people who've invented entirely new genres, entirely new ways of storytelling. What do you say to those people?
Personally, I think you need to have the insight layer to drive the creativity, because that is the proof point. Often budgets are very restricted and small, so you have to kind of almost justify why they should pay money on viewer engagement and interactivity within that program. And the insight layer will deliver that. If you just say, this is a great creative idea and it might be a great hit, often there isn't the budget to take those creative risks. So if you've got the data set behind you that can provide that layer, then that often kind of gets things over the line. And we're focusing very heavily on doing a lot of different case studies in and around those different areas creatively across the social TV spectrum to prove that this is an industry and you can build it a really great creative foundation on data. And if you haven't got that there, then there's no industry whatsoever. So it can't just take, come up with one fantastic idea and then just go, okay, this is going to work internationally, you need to prove it. So we're working very hard in Europe just to kind of prove once that idea has been conceptualized, the data set can sit underneath that and they work in tandem together to then say, right, this could be an international format that really works.
Anything to add?
Yeah, so I think that sometimes first of all, obviously, I think creativity, when you constrain it, it needs some constraints. The writers at Seinfeld used to, pull things out of a fishbowl and say, okay, this episode's got to take place entirely inside of a parking garage. Nobody can leave the parking garage in this episode. And that brought forth great creativity. How are we supposed to do this? We had a customer game show network, and they put game shows on TV. They wanted to have a YouTube channel aimed at millennials. It's called Door 3 Network. It's great. But they looked at and they said, hey, Rob, it doesn't look like game shows are big on YouTube. And beyond like kind of silly game show answers, they weren't big. So what are you supposed to do as a creative? You could just make a game show, may or may not work. And they looked at, okay, well, what is popular with our audience? Pranks are very popular, right? Certain Minecraft video games and certain versions of that, like Hunger Games competitions. And they decided that pranks was a really interesting area where they could make fun game shows. There was already content, and passionate communities around pranking on YouTube. And that's worked out, extremely well for them. They also use our Tubular influencer score to pick contestants who, from a Moneyball approach, you haven't heard of, but they have an audience and they come on the game show, they bring their audience with them to make them aware of Door 3. So, I think it helped give them, the kernels for ideas.
So, expanding on that, what you just said is, I think, on the one hand, quite powerful, on the other hand, quite terrifying, because if we look at the kind of commoditization that's happened in music and in literature, where increasingly you get more of the same because it's worked before, it'll work next time. And there is a fear that I think is not totally unfounded that data will do the same thing with television content, with films, that will just wind up making more of the same stuff that worked last year. How can we avoid that, Warid?
Thanks, Louisa. So three things, I think, and the guys mentioned some great points about driving creativity with insights and data. So my background is in science, is in neuroscience, and I do some art on the side. And so three things to answer that question. One, I don't think creativity can be replaced. By that I mean the innate human creative process. I think there needs to be always room for that, right? Unguided, pure human creative process. Two, I think you can support that. Meaning, the music example is a great example, right? So something works, so you're going to see the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So, in data science, we talk about looking at the negative spaces between what's happening out there and what is not happening, what there is space for to happen, right? So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, unfortunately, so this loops back to my first one. Unfortunately, a lot of the current creative process is making the 40th vampire movie, right? And so what data can tell you is, and data science can tell you, is that 40th vampire movie in a particular market going to boost the category, or is it going to kill it? And so, I mean, that 3 ways, I think.
Good answer.
Thank you.
All right, let's go a little lighter. So, all 3 of you have spent an enormous amount of time looking at loads and loads of data generated by loads and loads of people. What are some of the surprising or amusing or weird things that you've learned from that you would not have guessed? Anyone?
That people's mouths are very potty, primarily. No, there's a lot of content, particularly on social, that is useless. Like, people will say whatever is the first thing that's on their mind, and often a lot of that is not interesting to broadcasters and production companies. They don't want to see that. So by able to filtering that content out and getting the prime nuggets of information that are happening in the moment, that you can help drive the right content and the right conversation and the right narrative, then that is really, really important. And I think it's making broadcasters and production companies aware that they have that power to do that with the right technology. It does seem, on a lot of occasions, even conversations I'm having now after being involved in this industry for nearly 3 years, that there's a lot of fear around integrating social because there is so much just wasted airtime. But if you can finesse that content and bring it to screen where it adds value and it has relevance to what your editorial is already with existing formats, and whether it can drive new and innovative places with new formats, then that's where the real golden nuggets of opportunity are. And it's convincing those broadcast production companies that that is possible. And that's what we've been doing for the last sort of 2-3 years now.
I'm not sure what's surprising. The question was surprising trends, but I think there may be some logical trends that we've seen now proven with data. So we spend a lot of time analyzing global demand trends and what's happening. And I think, one thing we know is that U.S. content, has always kind of gone out to the world, and you can see there's a lot of demand for it internationally. I think recently we've seen increasingly so a trend where local productions are starting to gain international traction. So it's not surprising, but it's an interesting trend. So, for example, we see Turkish dramas starting to have increasingly more demand in Latin America. Telenovelas have a lot of demand in the Middle East. So, very, very, very insightful trends that you can pick up by just looking at what's happening in terms of global demand.
Yeah, on our side, at Tubular, we've indexed over 1 billion videos that have almost every meaningful video on YouTube and on Facebook. We don't know what you watch, by the way. What you watch is private. But if you like or comment on a YouTube video or share something via Twitter, we've got 14 billion of these signals together, and we can see what people like, and we look at the statistics. And I think 2 interesting things. One, on your end, within Facebook, which is an area that we've been analyzing a lot recently, the top video creators on Facebook are largely international creators. 9 out of 10, there's only one based in the United States, which is BuzzFeed. That's not true on YouTube. And so you see this international footprint being gained, where YouTube was more US-centric, consumed globally, but US-centric. And then the second thing, I think, when we first looked at YouTube, and this is like 1.5 years ago, we saw all these passionate communities that are underserved by cable TV. So either because their niche is too small, like lacrosse, you can have a tennis network, you can have an NFL network, you can't have a lacrosse network on TV, or because their content is much better suited for on-demand, it's so fragmented like beauty, or video gaming, or even music videos. Music videos perform horribly on TV. They're free, and MTV still doesn't want to show them, right? And the reason for this is that if you want to watch a video game, you might be doing BioShock. I'm interested in Call of Duty. You care about Destiny. We don't want to watch anything in a linear format. It's the same with beauty. If you want to see a middle-aged woman who's Asian do makeup, that's not, how long would you have to wait if there was a beauty network? And these things go on and on. Classical music and a cappella, and I think parkour. Dominoes. There's a woman on YouTube, she gets 6 million views a month, Dominoes channel. There's one called Cute Girls Hairstyles. Hairstyles is a huge thing on YouTube, by the way. And it turns out, I was like, wow, why is that? Oh, everyone has hair, right? And they care, and they spend time, and they spend time doing it, right? Or most people have hair. And so Cute Girls Hairstyles is one of the leading ones, 20 million views a month. It's this family with 4 girls in Texas, great story. Every Sunday night, starting 5 years ago, the mom braided one of her girls' hair. And Hunger Games discovered them, and so she is the person who designed a lot of the braids in the Hunger Games. She probably pulls in $1 million a year doing this with various sponsorships, and now her daughters are like Vine and music stars. But it's, no one cares about, do the big media companies really care about lacrosse and hairstyles? Like, they don't, right? So it's an amazing opportunity that data can point you towards in discovering some of these passionate communities.
That was an awesome segue to my next question, which is, so we've talked a little bit about some opportunities that might not be obvious. Telenovelas being marketed in the Middle East would not be something that would have occurred to me off the top of my head.
They're not necessarily marketed.
No, I understand, but there's an opportunity there, clearly. So the question is, have you seen it happen yet? Do you think it will happen soon? If not, an instance where data, the insights brought about by data have actually caused a change in business models? Anyone?
Well, there's a few areas that we're working on and have got case studies around where that has exactly happened. One of the areas that I've been pushing quite aggressively in the UK is around dynamic social advertising. So you saw it in the sizzle reel there. There was an ad we did with Ed Sheeran on E4 around the Big Bang Theory. And we wanted to prove to brands that you could actually have insight in real time that would drive a change in the ad itself. So the ad there, just to give you a bit of an overview, it was set up by Ed Sheeran at the start of the Big Bang Theory. You had a choice of 3 songs to choose from that you voted on social, and then using the Spredfast technology, it was aggregated, and then the winner was then selected, and Ed would then perform the whole song at the end of the show. So what that provided to brands is to say, well, if you wanted to get more of a injection of comments and understanding of what viewers and people like around your brand, then that can really change the shape of advertising and allow you to charge more commerciality around ad space in general, given the declining revenues in general. So that has really changed the face of particularly Channel 4 and ITV in the UK of how they're looking at advertising and how that can generate more revenue for them and change their whole look with that model altogether. So that's really exciting, and I think that's something that's particularly been generating more traction now in Europe also. So yeah, it's good.
Well, business model, that's tough, whole business model. One company they can think of that's working on this is Beachbody. They're the makers of P90X and Extreme Insanity Workouts. They're a customer. They, their main distribution format is selling DVDs through infomercials. You kind of follow that forward enough, and it would get a little scary selling DVDs through infomercials. And so they looked at YouTube, and primarily one of the things that got them moving into digital video was the success of this guy, I can't remember his name. It's Six Pack Abs, and he's all over YouTube, getting tens of millions of views a month. He kind of owns like these hardcore workouts on YouTube. I think it's like Tony Cheng or something, and he sells kind of a subscription website service. They looked at that and they looked at the volume of the business he was doing, and even though they're a 9-figure revenue company, got them moving in that area. And so, what content should we create that's not an infomercial, and who should we make it with? One last little data thing, they found that by looking at who was liking and commenting on their videos, they had no idea. This guy, Jack's Films, has had 2 million subscribers and is a very, very popular YouTube channel. Meanwhile, Tony Horton had like 10,000. So he loved the idea of working with Tony Horton, and they've made a bunch of videos together. It's been seamlessly. So it's like finding those influencers, but they're going to have to reinvent their business, right? And they're not the only ones. There's lots of people who are working in the legacy cable model, which will be great. But the problem is it'll just be hard to grow your business if you're dependent on cable TV, traditional linear. It won't go away, but it'll be very hard to grow.
Yeah, look, very quickly. We work with a lot of content buyers. This is more from a content acquisition point of view and decision making, and it's not necessarily about the business model per se, but it's about the decisions that are being made about what content to bring to the particular market for their particular audiences. And so the examples that I gave earlier about Turkish dramas in Latin America and telenovelas in the Middle East and so on and so forth, sometimes you see some radical decisions being made around not taking things for face value just because, there's big marketing budget behind this particular US show that's coming out. A lot of times there's actually a local production show that has more demand in that local market and is going to perform better and is going to pull in better numbers, audience numbers, OTT streams and so on than this, really, really expensive property out of the US. And so from a content acquisition point of view, getting the best content for that particular market, that's really where we're seeing a lot more change now.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. Do we have any questions from the audience? Can't really see you. If you have a question, raise your hand and somebody will come and bring you a mic. Don't be shy. Yeah, we've got one over here.
Yeah, I'm wondering, to whom are you bringing your data to? Who is making the changes according to the data you're delivering? I'm working with digital products with video content in. Is it to the team actually, like creating the new content, or is it to someone else who is going to order the new content?
So within the organization, who are the people?
Within the organization.
Okay.
To whom do you bring the data?
I imagine it's a little bit different for all three of you.
I'll first go. For us, really, we work with content buyers and content sellers. On the content buyer side, primarily it's content acquisition and programming teams. So people who are making the decisions around what content to acquire, how much to pay for it, negotiating for it, and the programming team to support that. And on the sales side, it's the content distribution teams, because they now have insights around the global demand for their content, so they can monetize it more effectively. So it's really the distribution and sales function specifically within those organizations.
Yeah, I mean, our data is used for other purposes than content, so you get sales and marketing and folks buying it. But it would be the head of the digital studio or the programming team.
Yes, similarly to these guys actually, but from my perspective, it's more about feeding that into the creative process, so the content makers. I think the insight side of things is really interesting for sort of format distribution and being more effective of where you can target your formats internationally. So the format distribution teams, marketing teams, sales teams. So there is a really broad spectrum of where this is being placed, but depending on what the actual need is for the broadcaster or production company.
It's covering the whole spectrum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Everyone.
Everyone, yeah.
Does anyone else have a question? 'Cause if you don't, I do. Anyone? Right, me then. So a lot of content creators, distributors are now forming their own data teams in-house. I heard somebody hired a team of like 50 recently, which is kind of insane. I mean, obviously it's good that they're
50 what?
50 data science engineers or something along those lines, which God knows what they actually mean by that. And this is my question to you. So you each have made a life out of looking at data. I mean, we all know that data itself is meaningless until somebody brings meaning to it, somebody extracts meaning from it. So what for you are the big challenges? What's the hardest part about making that work?
I think for me, it's about putting it in language that broadcasters understand, because I think technology and creativity still are very much two different things. And it's about trying to put it in terms and means that make sense to a creative. Particularly coming to an event like this, it's very difficult to say, we're a tech company and we have creative ideas of how this tech can work, and there's a lot of still very heretic understandings and beliefs about program creation. And being able to put that insight into language and tangible ideas that they understand that resonate, I think has been the challenge. But being able to do that now, and after having the relationships we've got with broadcasters, not only in Europe but also in the US, I think that's put us in a good position to be able to talk fluidly about how that data set can work for them in a real creative way that's going to accelerate their business from an editorial and commercial perspective.
Yeah, I think creativity, by the way, is the highest calling. These stories are what make us cry or laugh or pay attention, so we're educated, right? The data is just a supporting thing, and I think it's it shouldn't be a little threatening. It shouldn't be threatening to folks. In fact, Peter Thiel goes to a long way to say computers and humans are fundamentally good at different things, right? They're just totally different. And so marrying them together, and so that is the hard part, is drawing the analysis, the insights out of the data usually requires a person, and sometimes a customer won't have the people on hand to do it. We have to do it for them, or an MCN, full screen will do it using Tubular data or something like that. But that's good, but it's required, right? The computers aren't going to program the future of TV on their own.
God, I hope not.
They won't.
I think in terms of, you see a lot of these companies that are pulling teams of 50 data engineers and so on. I think the biggest challenge that the industry faces going forward is going to be around using data, is contextualizing the data so that it is meaningful, right? And that comes by humans, to your point, contextualizing that data and then building it into algorithms and so on. So I think for example, look at the existing recommendation, kind of consumption-based recommendation algorithms out there. used by a variety of different platforms and companies. And it's, you've watched ABC, so you may also be interested in DEF. And a lot of them don't even take into account things like time of day, So sort of like, I ate a lot of, ice cream and beer last week, but don't recommend that to me.
Sounds like a good week.
Yeah, exactly, it was. And then, don't recommend that to me in the morning, right? So contextualizing that recommendation. So serving, getting to the point where you can serve the right content to the right person at the right time on the right device. I think that's the next phase.
Thank you. And we are out of time for this session, I'm afraid. These three. All right, we'll do one. Go on.
Sorry, hello. This is to Warad. You'd mentioned that through your analysis, it's often the gaps in the data that provide greater insight. Could you just explain a little bit or give us an example of where that happens? Absolutely.
So what we mean by talking about the negative spaces, I think that was the point you were referring to, is not necessarily looking at... So you can assess things like, I use an example of the 40th vampire movie, right? Is that going to increase the category or decrease it? And the answer is going to be different for different countries. Sometimes you see genres and trends peaking in certain markets, certain countries, but dying off in others. And there are leading markets and lagging markets in terms of creating the demand. What data science really allows you to do in looking at the negative spaces is sometimes almost not, rather than seeing what has worked. So on the music, look at the music example. So this has worked, right? So we're going to get this. So Miley Cyrus has worked, so you're going to get Justin Bieber and et cetera, which are all great acts, right? But they're very similar. What the negative spaces allow you to do is look at what isn't being addressed right now, and so hopefully supporting the creation of a new, almost genre-defining act, a new Michael Jackson and Elvis, the Beatles, if that makes sense.
Okay, and I am now going to wrap it up. These three are going to be out in the Meet the Speakers area for the next half hour or so. So if there was something that you're dying to ask, but we're too shy to do it in here, now's the time. And we will be back here in 15 minutes for the next session, which will be all about immersive technology. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.